Okay, it's August 31st, 2019, and this is a continuation of me going through my ethical presence manuscript. I don't know how much of this I'm going to convert to videos, but I'm going to keep going. I don't think all of it is going to be converted to video. Uh, there's some of it that's a little bit more technical or whatever, just describing exercises or something. But a lot of this writing, I believe I will. And it's interesting, the first piece up here, where we left off, I was going through the section on the part one, the introduction to uh, improvisation was the title. But as you can see, it's got a wide ranging view of what that means. And so this next piece, just in sequence, is my way. I'm gonna read this and talk around it. Okay. My way. I identify with Frank Sinatra. He mostly didn't adapt to the media landscape. It's funny that I'm saying I identify with Frank Sinatra. I mean, I do and I don't. There's a part of Frank Sinatra I identify with, and there's a part of Frank Sinatra I don't. And I think this next line, uh, which was written uh, a few years ago, right? So he changed the media landscape. Well, I don't identify with that. I don't see myself changing the media landscape or much of anything. This is all I'm writing about. Apparently, when I wrote these paragraphs, I had some sort of illusion or delusion that I was going to have some sort of large influence. He revolutionized crooning in the 1950s. Well, that he did, and I really don't think that I'm revolutionizing anything but myself. And if that revolution has any impact on other people, it's because it resonates with them and it helps them revolutionize themselves, however they revolutionize themselves. I think since I wrote this, I am really very far away from the great man theory of anything. Great man writer, great the. Uh, I've lost my belief in heroes, and but not heroism. Now this I identify with. He said no one sang like he did, and I think that's true. I mean, I think that's a strength of mine. I mean, I do have an individual voice. Now I go on. He was an indifferent actor. Well, I identify with that. I'm very indifferent to acting, as I've discussed a little bit before. Um, Show business, theater, performance. Tired of it. Just tired of it. And I think the process of making movies bored him, and I identify with that because the process of making theater bores me. He was capable of performing a great movie scene, but not consistently. And actually, I might revise that. I think he was capable of doing it consistently. I think he didn't want to do it. I think when he had to do it, because one big difference between me and Frank Sinatra is that Frank Sinatra was a hell of a lot more ambitious than I am in terms of making it in the eyes of other people. So when he worked with Gene Kelly and he learned all that dancing, which wasn't something that came naturally to him, but he did it quite well. I mean, he worked his ass off to do that. I've never had the motivation to do that because I don't want to be in fucking Anchors Away. And then I think the same thing is true when he got his Oscar for From Here to Eternity. His back was up against the wall, and he saw, well, he could establish himself as a dramatic actor, and he did that. And he had a couple of performances that were pretty good in the 50s in that early period, but then he just started phoning it in. Because the one thing that he was passionate about, and the one thing that he really loved was this particular type of singing and this particular attitude towards popular music that really was his. There's a book I read years ago called The Vein of Gold. The Vein of Gold is like, what are you really great at? Well, Sinatra's greatness is in what he did with the popular song. And I would argue that there is a level to that, which is art. So sometimes people could be confused. You might think I'm against uh, fame or making money. It's not that I'm against them. I just am not motivated to pursue them. And I think Sinatra was, which helped him get the platform that he needed. But then I think when he went in that studio and he did his art with the music for a period, then it became like repetitious and phoning it in. I mean, he wasn't an artist for the entirety of his life, but what he did with the with Capitol Records in the 1950s and what he did uh, up into maybe his mid 50s or whatever, there was that space in there. I don't know, like a 20-year period. That was really art. That was his voice, and he was really saying a lot of things through popular song. He wasn't a master of dramatic structure within a scripted context. But he was within a popular song format. The subtlety and the nuance and the transformation that he brought to the music when he was singing a song was far superior than anything he did as an actor, or also comedically. I mean, he also had kind of a leaden comic sense. He didn't have a lightness to him at all. I think it's one of the reasons why he liked working with Dean Martin, because Dean Martin provided that. He also was a master of spontaneity, and he did a version of jazz, and he did a version of improvisation, and sometimes it was hackneyed, like he was just trying to be cool and ad libbing, Scooby Dooby Doo or any of that shit. But but a lot of times though he found a lot of nuance within the song, and sometimes his little changes of lyrics or whatever, and his different or even melody and his interpretations were improvisational, and they were great. And it's one thing that I really believe that improvisation has as much structure and requires as much repetitive work as something that's classically scripted and put together. There's two processes of writing on the Rick blog. Uh, some of it is the writing and the rewriting, the traditional way of writing, but most of it is more improvisational writing, where I see the writing getting better the more that I do it. So I've used this parallel before. It's more like a sport. You don't script a basketball game, but you practice basketball. And if you have talented basketball, then the more that you practice basketball, the stronger you're going to be in the game. And I think Sinatra was like that. He made errors. I mean, he famously had bottomed out in his Ava Gardner period, where he really couldn't get arrested. He was working with Mitch Miller, who had him doing this stupid novelty song shit, and that's when he had to come back with the From Here to Eternity. Uh, but he also was, like a lot of his contemporaries, lost in the late '60s and the early '70s when there's a tape of him singing with the Mamas and the Papas. He's in a Nehru jacket. He looks like an asshole. Um, although interestingly, everything's wrong. He's trying to be something that he's not, and yet his interpretation of the music is that actually it's good. He can't avoid he can't make himself a bad singer. He also had a stupid kind of self consciousness, and this is he admired like Pavarotti and thought that Pavarotti said the opera singers were the real singers, that he wished he was that. Of course, that's an insecurity that he had because I don't know if he ever finished high school or whatever. So he, as a popular artist, and I identify with this, he doesn't come out of any classic tradition. I mean, I'm out here like I'm doing this stuff. I think, but I think some of my writing is just tremendous. I think that some of the stuff on this blog is like really really good. But it's completely in a popular format because I'm not really, I haven't been knighted by any king or queen of any genre. I mean, I'm forced out here and I'm kind of working on my own. It's very interesting. I'm comparing myself to Sinatra, this person who is one of the most famous people, let alone performers or artists of the 20th century, right? And I'm here in complete obscurity. So that's one thing that is completely different between the two of us. But the but here's the thing about art. Art is kind of like God. It doesn't see those differences. It doesn't see that kind of a difference. So um, so that's that. Now, when he came back at the end with was supposedly his retirement, but then he kept going back out there. But when he put on the tux and he went to Madison Square Garden and he sang "My Way" in New York, New York, and he stopped completely with the acting, and in a lot of ways he stopped completely with the bullshit and just got up there and sang and just did what he does. Which I think is a benefit to getting older. I mean, it's like fuck all the superfluous, fuck all the stuff you're supposed to do, fuck all the stuff you would like to do that isn't who you are. Fuck worrying about not being Pavarotti, right? Fuck worrying about being with it for the kids, or whatever, to sing with the mamas and the papas. Fuck all that and just do what you do. Now, again, the big difference is that he would do it and he would go and he would play Madison Square Garden. And why did he play Madison Square Garden? And why am I doing this video blog right here when I'm thrilled when I get 30 people to look at the video? And I'm sure very few of them watch the thing all the way through. So why does that thrill me? And he gets to play Madison Square Garden. Well, it's because he had that gene that I didn't, that he had that big ambition that he was going to bust his ass to do the things that he was being asked to do in order to be prominent. He was going to go dance with Gene Kelly. He was going to go do From Here to Eternity. He was going to do all these things in order to capture the imagination of all these people. And I've never been interested in doing it, and certainly at this point, I'm not. That's my big difference with Frank Sinatra. But I do identify with Frank Sinatra in many other ways. He's very much ingrained in me, for better and worse. Pete Hamill wrote this about Frank Sinatra, said, "In the end, he was an artist, and that is all that matters. No one sang about love, loneliness, independence, joy, generosity, and optimism better than Sinatra. But But I like what Pete Hamill is saying here. In the end, he was an artist, and that is all that matters. That is all that matters. I identify with Frank Sinatra because of where I'm from, hearing his songs in my Italian American father's car and the roadside spaghetti houses of heavily Italian American Rochester, New York, really helped shape me. Italians are famously emotional and theatrical. They are fiercely independent and often great at what they do. Being a master artisan is a big deal to an Italian. Italians are philosophical and expressive. They can be crude, ignorant, and bullying, but they are also forgiving of themselves and others. Italians are generous and embrace life more than worry about aging and death. I also grew up with many Irish Catholic friends. They had a tendency to be a little bit more guilty about their love of life and compensated a bit by being sentimental and morbid. The Italians I knew were less reflective. Italians are singers and actors by nature, and the Irish are writers. So I don't know, do I have some Irish in me? I don't. But this reflective part is a big part of me. So maybe these ethnic qualifications are bullshit. I think they are. But anyway, I'm going to keep going because I kind of like this writing anyway, even though I don't completely agree with it anymore. Italian Americanism is a real cultural perspective, quite different from our European Italian ancestors' point of view, and much broader in experience than what is portrayed on The Sopranos. Although there is no denying that the darkness of the mob and that the admiration by many of the bullying sadism of that mentality is part of our thing, even for the majority of us that never had anything to do with the mafia. Well, it's definitely, it's not part of my thing. They make me sick. And whereas I could see the character of Tony Soprano's charm, he disgusted me. And I never liked him. And I don't even remember the name of this movie, but I saw a movie with Judy Holliday and Richard Conte from the 1950s, where Judy Holliday plays a woman who marries into an Italian American family, and they're very hardworking and they're very warm, and they have a lot of a folk culture, and it's the way that I like to think of my background. My father knew some guys that were, had some sort of link to the mafia. There was a guy that lived across the street from us in the subdivision they were in that was in the mafia, and like in a higher level position. The they approached my father. He turned them down. He was smart enough not to get involved with them. But but there were parts of him that on 9/11. I mean, he was a very old man then, but on 9/11, he saw that. His first reaction when he saw the tower burns, well, that's power. So there is that kind of respect for power. But that's the darkness of Italian Americanism. That darkness is in there. Even take somebody like Rocky Marciano. He the Italian heavyweight champion, the only heavyweight champ to go undefeated, a hero. Here, although he preceded me, I was like born when he was just about finishing his boxing career. I don't know exactly when he stopped, but but his heyday was in the 1950s. But Rocky Marciano, he was just great. He was great with children. He was great with his family. He was a responsible guy. He honored the flag. He was everything. He was the American dream, and what he did was he went out and he beat the shit out of people. This was this is kind of the this is kind of in what Italian Americanism is. And that's an aspect of Sinatra that obviously famously being involved in the mob. And I saw on some documentary about him or something that he condescended to somebody who was working with him, some guy, and he snaps his fingers and calls the guy out and just wants him to rub his neck or something. And then he's very dismissive of the guy. I mean, that kind of stuff makes me sick. Which I think maybe says that there are layers to the diverse elements of our personality. And if you go like, okay, we got white, and we've got male, and we've got baby boom, and we have Italian American. But then if you penetrate into art, you get beyond that. And it's like, so this piece that I'm kind of rewriting in front of you is like, well, I identify with Sinatra, but I don't. And there are some aspects that I commit to, and there's some that I don't. And there are some things about him that I see in myself, and there are some things that I see are the opposite of the way that I am. And these are the type things that just have to be understood about oneself and accepted. And that, so let me go back to the text here. Sinatra is the Italian American icon. The life that he used as the source material of his performances was the story of the emotional life of Italian Americans in the mid and late 20th century. Of course, non-Italians responded too, because he was a great popular artist who knew the universal in his specific experience. And that's true. And also, this is one thing. The artist seeks out pain. I know that sounds bizarre, but he seeks out pain. But one thing, Sinatra did love songs, and he sought out Ava Gardner. He sought out this nomadic, romantic life that he had. He sought out Mia Farrow, like this foolish going back and having the young bride and trying to be young again. And he sought out all these follies. He took risks and he made mistakes. He sought out great career ambition, and he made big career errors. And he felt all of it. And that I identify with tremendously. No pain, no art. No pain, no life. If everything is, if you could just color between the lines and you just do that, if you hang on by fear because of something, or if you decide just to, basically do what you're told, you're never going to create any art, because you're never going to get any understanding of anything. You don't get understanding of anything unless you go out and you fuck up a lot. So I really identify with that about Sinatra. He fucked up and then he sung about it. He sung what he learned. I identify with Frank Sinatra even when I write I'm singing and acting. That's not true. Singing, maybe. I'm not acting. No more acting. We each create from deep personal experience. Well, that's true. A lot of it earned from failure, wrong turns, heartache, and mistakes. Some of it from triumph. All of it from wonder. A constant urge to figure it out, a reverence for the mystery of life, and a desire to know life as much as we can. We lead people to consider our ways of thought and feeling, that they can take or leave. We use our experience to challenge and encourage and free audiences to react and respond. In other words, have their own new experience and understand their current experience while encountering ours. We want to live our way because it's the only way that feels true, and we're quite fierce about it. The worst thing would be to be a coward, a liar, and a half-ass. That's the personal part that drives us Italian singers. to say the things he truly feels and not the words of one who kneels. Ring a ding ding. Okay. I'm going to stop this here. All right. And come back to this. Thank you. See you next time.